Hello, my friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family. How are you guys? Can you guys hear me in the chat room?
Testing, 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 testing.
We have to do this all the time now with the new software that they have because it doesn't always cooperate. So, how is everybody today? Uh-oh.
Roar!
Grizzly in the house.
Are your ears okay?
There we go. Mercy Anonymous. Python High Ladder. Crispy, good to see you, brother. Ray, my other brother from another mother. Sanford, Runyon, good to see you guys. Renee, hello over there in sunny Arizona. Benjamin, good to see you as well. Awesome, guys. You know, when you start really looking deeply into so many different sources, and it's really a shame that so many people only really look into one system, one tradition, one religion, one dogma. Because if you go deep, there are some things in there that will just boggle your mind. Things that may appear to be coincidences, but we all know there are no coincidences. Or, as we have to say in YouTube land, everything is a coincidence. It's purely unintentional and intended for entertainment purposes only.
You got it right. Yay.
I did it.
Yay. I'm so proud.
Rosemary's cooking up a storm in the kitchen.
Awesome.
That's good. We just had some dinner. We basically all vegetarian, but yummy. And Cindy's mom loved the gravy, and she's like, how do you make it?
Yeah, I mean, guys, he is such a good cook. Oh my gosh, thank goodness, because I could burn water, I tell you.
So, how is everybody doing out there? You know, a lot of our friends and family are unplugging a lot, and it seems like the ones that are unplugging a lot are doing pretty damn good. And, others that are just hinging right now on everything that's happening with the whole global situation are getting stressed out. 2 nights ago, we slept horribly. Last night, I've been getting in the habit of, I turn my phone off unless I'm going to use it. I just turn it off, shut it down. I don't just put it off to the side. I shut it down. And, I'm feeling better, honestly, doing that. I think that we are being bombarded with all sorts of signals, and I think it's an accumulation of things that are getting to some people. And the Lupa says they've had very strong ringing in the ears. That's been an ongoing thing. That for sure has been.
It has, and that's frequency changes, you guys. When we do the little tunings and stuff, that's gonna pull you into alignment somewhat. And as the forces work to pull you into alignment, your frequency is gonna change. So a lot of things are gonna change.
Osboy in the house. Good to see you, brother. I guess now, because Osboy was going to come over and come to the States. He's from Australia, and we were hoping to hook up with him sometime, but all that in this crazy situation we got going on has been totally put to the side now, unfortunately. Salabe Wetma in the house. Good to see you.
It's so great to see you, Grizzly. I typed in the wrong email. I need you to email me, though, but I made a typo, so I'm going to put my email in there again.
So, yeah, there are some things that are they're not coincidences. They're not, and if people will take the time to open their minds, expand their horizons, start looking a little bit deeper, we could really change the world so quickly. It's basically when our mindset is solidified that we get into problems. As we know, people can be manipulated. And I've talked about it so many times. Looking at history is awash with tragedies where people have been manipulated by others and unfortunately have done very tragic things. We could just look back to World War II and Nazi Germany. We could go back farther. We could look at the Inquisition, the Crusades. We could look at the witch burning. We could look at what was done to all the natives in North and South America as well. And we could go into a lot of other things that people don't even realize. All the conquests that have been done, really, by the same controllers. It's the same controllers all throughout our modern age, going back to the beginning of the Kali Yuga, or the beginning of the fourth world of the Hopi. And coincidentally, or is it coincident? When you look at, and let me go over here. I'm going to pull up a PDF, which is really good. It's very thorough. So the fourth world, which we are in now, which we are seeing pass away, according to the Hopi, it started in 3114 BC. 3,114 years BC, before Christ, right? Or although Christ is thought to have come probably between 4 and 7 BC, so that's all off. The Gregorian calendar is screwy, and everything is screwy in our modern system, and that's all done on purpose. It's all, smoke and mirrors. So, okay, 3,114 BC, the Hopi say, is the beginning of this fourth world that we find ourselves in. And I wasn't going to talk about this until a little bit farther down. Let me see if I can find it here. There you go. The birth of the Kali Yuga happened on 3102 BCE. And that's according to the Surya Siddhanta. And is that a coincidence? Think about that. They're on the opposite sides of the world from each other. India and Arizona, primarily. Opposite sides of the world from each other. How do they pretty much agree? They're 12 years apart. How do they pretty much agree on when this age started? Is that not fascinating?
It is fascinating, and probably purely coincidental. But then I was thinking that maybe since they give us different calendars, like the Gregorian calendar and the 10-month calendar, it's all so confusing. Maybe that would pull in those 12 years.
So, what do you guys make of that? Isn't that pretty awesome? It's not that far apart. So you have the Hopi in Arizona saying that the fourth world began 3114 BC. You have the Vedic tradition, the Hindus over in India, saying that this age that we're in, the Kali Yuga, started in 3102. That is pretty amazing, guys. I really find that verification that they're right, that this is about when this dark age, happened.
It did. And, now a lot of things are coming to light, and we do have the internet. And even though maybe all the information isn't exact perfect, we do have more puzzle pieces.
Yeah, exactly. And, another one that's not too far off, and I'm going to hand the mic.
Yeah, I really enjoy the Hopi prophecies. It was when I went to Arizona and I went to Monument Valley, I swear I had what you might call a walk-in. My whole life, my everything changed. Hormones, everything changed about me. So there's something to this stuff.
And then the Hebrew year count starts at 3761 BCE, which the Jewish philosopher Maimonides established as the biblical date of creation. So creation of this era, this world again. So, that's 600. There's a 20% discrepancy there. But the other two are so close. It's just fascinating to look at and just think about that. And so when we look at the Hopi and the Hopi prophecy, when we look at this, you see these timelines, and there's like two different lines here, and we'll get into it. But basically what you have is the circles represent a great shaking of the earth, which has been interpreted to be World War I and World War II. And then they have a World War III. And what you see is the people on this timeline are gone. And whereas over here on this timeline, where you see corn and harvest over here, you see people remain. So it's interesting to get into in depth, and we are going to get into it. Part of what has been hitting me and hitting a lot of people lately is timeline splits, which gets you into the whole thought, if you're coming from a Judeo-Christian background. Why does this say the video is private? Hang on one sec here, guys. That should not be private.
Strange.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's weird. Stream settings, audible, closed captions, analytics. Well, hopefully this is going through. Can you guys see the stuff I put up as well? Can you see, sweetie, if I...
Yes. Well, no, I see this.
Okay.
And you got about a 20-second delay, so it should turn into that in a moment.
It's all screwed up with the way this system is. It made the last live stream a complete copy of the prior one, which was crazy. So let's go into edit. Let's see what we got.
So now they have this.
Okay, good. Okay, so that is rolling.
Yep.
That is good. Yeah, it says public right here. So why is it saying... Yeah, it's strange, But anyway, this is all part of the censoring that's going on. So the Hopi are fascinating, and I've always been fascinated by it. So when we talk about like the birth of the Kali Yuga, for instance, now that is the time when Krishna left the earth to return to Vaikuntha, which is his home realm. And so Krishna left the earth at that time. And you got to wonder about these beings, because White Pahana, for instance, the Hopi are waiting for the return of White Pahana. And that means white brother, literally. And it's a teacher that came and taught us how to get along peacefully, how to get along with nature, how to raise crops, all sorts of things, all sorts of technologies of a sort, but technologies in harmony with nature and Mother Earth. And we see legends all around the world of these beings. Is it not likely, to me it hits me perfectly likely, that what we are talking about are extraterrestrial and perhaps interdimensional beings as well, that we might relate to as being some of the benevolent ones we hear mentioned, such as Pleiadians, Arcturians, Andromedans, Syrians, and the like.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like all of these beings were here at one point. That's why we have these stories, and that's why they try to dismiss them so much and call them they just call them myths or legends or, made up stories. I don't think these are made up at all. I think we all should have been taught this starting in kindergarten or out of the womb.
Yeah, but they don't want that, because if we realize that, we all have remembrances of these benevolent beings. And when we look into the Old Testament, and it talks about the mighty men of old, right? And we go into Genesis 6, and then it just changes gears like it's been edited. And all of a sudden, next thing it talks about is the giants causing all sorts of problems and devouring humans. And then God sends a flood to wipe out everything because of the mixed prodigy. We have to recognize that who controls this world, basically? Who controls the world? Well, it's obviously the people that, it starts with an I, ends with an I. There's a couple L's, a U, a M, a N, and it's the DRACO, as well. Dark entities, the biblical term, Satan. So wouldn't not make sense that the mainstream line of thinking is basically the satanic line of thinking. It's the line of thinking that the adversary has given us, because things have been completely distorted and completely modified in order to bring about division and divisiveness. And so we can't see these synchronicities, because, how many people have looked and seen that to the Hopi, the age started 3114, and to the Hindus, 3102. So they're pretty much in agreement. And when we start looking into other sources, like, we go over and listen to what Credo Mutwa over in Africa has given us in the mythology of his people over there, and the Dogon, and talking about the fact that we come from the stars. And, the same thing about these teachers that come and taught us all these, ways of living. And then they also have the stories of the Draco and reptilian beings, which are seen globally. Every culture has these stories. They all have these stories. So it's very, very universal in nature, and very interesting to look at this. So, they also tell us, the reality of the world too, and how the universe works, like Krishna shared in the Bhagavad Gita. So, because he basically talked about worn out bodies are discarded by the user, just as garments are, and how we, transmigration of the soul as the soul evolves and grows and goes through lessons of learning. So also the fact that God lies within every single one of us. Another fascinating coincidence, is the ant people. The ant people of the Hopi. They're the ones that brought people into the earth in order to survive the cataclysms of what was going on the surface. And when we translate that, Anunnaki means ant friend. So we have the word Anunnaki over in Arizona, with the Hopi people, Four Corners area. And we have Anunnaki over in Samaria as well. Now, some of the Anunnaki were more benevolent than others. Some were not so benevolent. Some wanted us gone like Enlil. And, others just wanted to be ruling everything like Marduk. And then there were others like Ningishita that wanted to teach us. And many think that Ningishita is Thoth, is Hermes, is Mercury. And, of course, Hermeticism, as well, the Hermetic arts, the hidden stuff that's in the Western tradition, like the Kabbalah as well. And there also is people that think that this is Quetzalcoatl and Viracocha. It's all Ningishita. So some of them are very benevolent, and others not so benevolent. So is that just another coincidence?
And I'm not sure if I'm right, but I do believe like the number one selling book here isn't it the Bible? I believe the Bible is like one of the number one selling.
Well, it's more Bible's been made than anything.
Right.
By far, not even close.
Yeah, and that's the system that they want us to buy into, and they want us to buy into it so badly to the point where they get us to somehow go against each other and get after each other if somebody steps out of line. They've gotten us to where we'll tattle on each other, and like if you're in church and you do something against what they want you to do, well, you'll get banished, and you won't be able to be in that group anymore. And for humans, group is more of a survival mechanism. For them to like banish people is going against survival, using the Bible, using religious texts and stuff. It's just not nice how they've separated us.
Oh, Grizzly, say it's not so. Grizzly says he feels bad now for putting bottle rockets in anthills. Think about that, man. All that hard work they did, and you just Yeah, honestly, but think about that. Would they not view you as, you know, uh, an Enlil, right?
Yeah.
Basically, when you think about it, um, it's pretty wild. There are no coincidences. And as we know, the Smithsonian has gone along and gotten rid of everything they can. And I forget what I was reading, but so many of the wars, as I've said, are all about hiding the relics of our past, so we can't discover the truth of our past. How many times do you think we've gone through this time period? How many times do you think we've gone through these wars and everything that we go through? Are we going through a Groundhog's Day? Is this Groundhog's Day on a 12,000 year cycle? What do you guys think?
I feel like definitely it is. And through all of the lies and misinformation, disinformation, our souls have been lost. And that's why it's really important for us to work on remembering who we are right now. That's very important. We are very significant, important. And finding our way back is, I think, vital right now, to raise the vibration, find your way back to who you are, find out your spirit family, your soul family. Just know that you are magnificent. You are, something truly, truly wonderful and beautiful to behold, and treat yourself as such. That way we raise our vibration and we prepare ourselves to be there for other people when they do need us.
Yeah, so, there have been over 6 billion copies of the Bible in print. So it is the number one printed book in the world. And, again, when we talked about the Gospels, there was 4, and there was over 200. So, and of course, all the Gnostic texts, those were hidden forever. And Gnosticism, gnosis, means knowing. And the type of knowing that you don't get from just analyzing something with the left brain. It's experiential. You actually experience it. Now that was targeted and suppressed. So we could see, and there's some great books in there too, talking about the battle of the light and the dark going on, and it's been going on forever. So interesting. Anunnaki, Aunt Friend. Can't really argue that. No, you can't. So what are the Hopi really telling us? Ultimately, they're telling us that those who return to the ways given to us in the original teachings from the benevolent beings and live in a natural way of life will not be touched by the coming of the purifier. They will survive and build the new world. Only in ancient teachings will the ability to understand the messages be found. And people talk about biblical prophecy coming true, but boy, I've seen stuff that was way more descriptive, way more specific from other sources in reality. When you look at, for instance, the reference to the cobwebs in the sky, there's so many cool references in the Hopi prophecy. Near the day of purification, there will be cobwebs spun back and forth in the sky. Well, we sure see those things up in the sky, don't we? That's just one of them. So when we look, because, they talk about chariots without horses, and they basically give great descriptions of trains and cars and airplanes, and it's not just the Hopi too. There's so many prophecies out there from other indigenous people that speak of the same thing. Of course, Hopi prophecy talks about World War III. It'll be started by those people who first revealed the light, the divine wisdom or intelligence in the other old countries, such as India, China, Islamic nations, and Africa. They say the United States is going to be destroyed, land and people by atomic bombs and radioactivity. And the war will be a spiritual conflict with material matters. Material matters will be destroyed by spiritual beings who will remain to create one world and one nation under one power that is of the Creator. And the time is not far off. The fourth world shall end soon. The fifth world will begin. This is what the elders know. The signs over many years have been fulfilled, and so few are left. But when we go back to the original piece here and the timeline, there's this splitting. So it could be interpreted more than one way. Will those that, as it says, there will be those that are not touched by this. Is it really a dividing of timelines? What do you guys think? Is it all about our vibration? And really, we have to stay high vibe now. That is the most critical thing.
So critical, and they won't stop with that in my head either. They keep telling me, raise your vibration, help others raise their vibration. And that's why this is our new mission, is to get in here and give you guys whatever guidance we can provide. Hopefully we come in and we help and give you something to hold on to that might raise your vibration a little bit more each day. Because I think that's where the timeline split is. I think it's up to us. That's what I keep getting. It just keeps getting louder and louder and louder too in my head, the imperativeness of raising vibration. And that does come through honoring yourself and honoring those around you. Just being a good person. Don't play the games. Just don't do it.
Most definitely. Rise above. So what I get and what comes to me is that the Western culture, the Western way of things that we see now is really coming to us from Atlantis. Robert Seffer is awesome, and actually his is the only channel lately that I've wanted to watch. I have totally disconnected from everything that's going on with the plague in the world. I recognize it. It's there. We could see it. We know it's going to, be panning out. So, I glance at the headlines. I give it 5 minutes. I'm not going to feed it. And I'm not going to, it's just toxic, because even looking at it makes me feel kind of ill. And, we just can't allow ourselves to bask in it. We had to make people aware of it, just like we had to try to wake up as many people as we could. Then there gets to be a time where you just can't take the poison anymore yourself. And that's kind of where I'm at now. It's like I just can't take the toxicity anymore because it's just so palpable. So we have been, working way more on going within, hours. I think it's, it's the most important thing right now is the spiritual side of things. And I'm getting off track with where I was going.
Your voice is so wonderful. Nobody cares.
My God, she's biased, guys. She's so biased, and so the thing is, when we start piecing together all these clues, we could see and understand what's happened in the past. And so, this is where I was going. So the Atlanteans, as we know, according to the legends, they kind of self-destructed. There is the thought they opened up a gate and allowed the Draco and the Wraiths in, the dark entities, the demons in. They also devolved. They really went backwards. Even though they went forward technologically, they went backwards spiritually. And, in many ways, the United States is Atlantis reborn, and that's been part of the Atlantean vision. What we have, I think, with the indigenous people is a connection to Lemuria, which was not as technically advanced, but was way more advanced spiritually. So I feel like when we're looking at the Vedic tradition and when we're looking at the shamanistic traditions, Native Americans, Australian Aborigines, the indigenous people of Africa as well, and the indigenous people of Europe too that have been just assimilated or destroyed as well. There we're looking at the traditions that came from Lemuria, which I think was a much higher culture, really. Much more in tune with the earth and harmonious. I think the fall, quote unquote, happened at the fall of Lemuria into the Atlantean culture, which I have to say, I feel like part of CERN is all about opening these gateways to allow more of the demonic entities in, to allow the Draco to come in and travel more freely. I think that's part of what that's all about as well. And so, we have that leftover Atlantean culture going on right now.
Oh, thank you, Grizz. Thanks for your support. One word sums up being loving, kind, fearless, high vibes, all of it. Just be rawr. Hey, I'm getting better. As long as your ears are okay, I don't mind doing the rawr.
So what's the outcome? Well, a big purging. But at the same time, when we looked at this, we're talking about the day of purification. The teachings say those who return to the ways given to us in the original teachings and live a natural way of life will not be touched by the coming of the purifier. They will survive and build the new world. Only in ancient teachings will the ability to understand the messages be found. And as we've talked about, in the Western tradition, the whole aspect of the divine feminine has been trampled on, just obliterated. Whereas the Holy Spirit, the Shekinah, is feminine, but it's not even recognized as being such. And it's because the way they control us is through testosterone, really. When you think about it, warlike ways. Divide and conquer, greed, ego, gluttony, selfishness. All the things that are going to lead to our destruction, just like Atlantis was destroyed before. And really what we need to do is to go back to the older ways of living in harmony with the earth, living simply, getting out of their control grid, which the way they control us primarily really is the monetary system. And as we know, they have plans to roll out a new one that will be even more restrictive. But we have to get out of the system. We need to return to the old ways, barter and trade. Also things like Ubuntu with contributionism. Just, supporting each other. So this is part of this whole thing. This is the biggest part. We have to step out and step back into what we were taught by these higher beings that came here a long time ago. And so this is a really good in-depth PDF that goes into all this. And you could see the universality of things when we look at when we start looking at all the things that, again, coincidental, the swastika shows up in obviously in Hinduism. The Germans, the Nazis, they should say, not really the Germans, the Nazis, twisted it and distorted it. It is a sun symbol. It has more than one meaning as well, but it's sacred to the Hopi as well. It's so cool when you look at this. There are parallels between the Tibetan tradition and the Hopi tradition as well. And here we see the serpent Draco right here. So they have their tablets, which basically give these prophecies. You could actually see a lot of things are hinted to here. It looks like there's a little UFO up there. But Capricorn, gate of the gods, to travel back to heaven. Cancer, gate of the men, to travel back to earth. And we see Ophiuchus. Yeah, with serpent's head and serpent's tail. And you got Hercules carrying the world on its shoulder, the serpent Draco, as we talked about. All these different signs that are universal when you get down to it. They're all universal. They all keep coming back and back and back. And of course, there's also the sign of the cross in the circle, which, according to the belief of quite a few, is representative of the creator gods, which are even much, much higher up than any of these that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, this is stuff that we should have been taught coming out of the womb. I think our lives would be a whole lot different today if we were exposed to these things right away. But instead, they put us in public schools, and they've twisted our social morale, and they've twisted our society. They've twisted our way of thinking. Up is down, down is up. They've taken our medical system and they've made us sick with it. They've taken the judges and lawyers, and they say they're following the law, but the laws are so corrupt, and it goes on and on and on, how everything is it's like we live in the upside down, and that's not a good place to be.
So I'll read some of this to you. So, December 21st, 2012, obviously a very, very important date. And again, when we get into all the different traditions, they might be a little bit off here, a little bit off there. And again, calendars have been created, destroyed, warped, as we know. But it was an important date because, we're talking about consciousness again. It's a conscious shift. So it is the moment indigenous worldview understands all former failed human systems and overbearing authorities cease to be given power by their creator, and the meek indigenous voice returns to those who will inherit the earth. A new era has begun. It's time to celebrate a coming together of all people. If we fast and pray in this cycle, purification will result, and we'll be able to hear the humble voice of our indigenous elders. It is these elders who offered the Hopi tablets to assist in the purification of the fourth world. And these are the 4 Hopi tablets of the Fire Clan and Bear Clan, as you see here, 2 different clans. So from ancient time in the past, these tablets were given to the Hopi by Masa. Masa is the guardian of the underworld. Interesting, because remember, they went down into the underworld in order to escape the cataclysm above. So we could be talking inner earth, or we could be talking also different densities, different dimensions as well. Now, Masal requested that they keep them until a number of signs were fulfilled at the end of the fourth world and the beginning of the fifth world. When the warning signs occurred, the Hopi were instructed to reveal the tablets and their prophecies to the world regarding the purification of the earth. Then the missing piece of the Hopi tablet would be revealed. The missing piece is the dark rift on December 21st, 2012, where Cygnus, the Messiah, dies and rises for his friend. Interesting, right? This dying resurrection theme. For, those of you that haven't studied into this, and, I think everybody should study into this. It repeats time after time after time. Again, we could go back to Osiris. It's always basically, at the winter solstice. And it's all about the fact, part of it is about the fact that the sun is waning, and then it reverses after 3 days. There's that 3 days where it's kind of still, and then boom, it starts to reverse and starts to go stronger, and we start to get more and more light in the world, warmth, and thus the crops will grow and things will be renewed. So we've seen that. I mean, if you guys haven't looked into Mithras and Dionysus, and it goes on and on and on with all the dying and resurrection gods that we have seen. So it's interesting that they have the same thing again that we have over in Europe, in the Middle East. It's just repeating everywhere we looked. So a time would come when the lost white and robed brother, or Pahana, will come to break open the Hopi tablets and reveal within their hidden sacred teachings. This kind of hidden teaching revealed to a future generation is a familiar mystic element among the Buddhists of Tibet. The Tibetans call it Girtar Ma for treasures, also Nidhi in Sanskrit. The Girtar Ma treasures are revealed teachings hidden away until they can be used for the benefit of people in the future. The Dead Sea Scrolls would be regarded as such. The hiding of sacred texts and objects was a practice of Padmasambhava, Lotus-born, who aided in formally establishing Buddhism in Tibet in the 8th century CE. Those prophesied to find these texts or objects in the future are known as Gurdarstan, or treasure finders. These treasures may be found in various sacred sites where they were originally hidden, or may be seen in a sacred visionary experience, which is a dag snang. Such a vision of a revealed treasure teaching is an expression of the enlightened intention of the Buddha mind. Perhaps in indigenous voice it can be said the Creator desired to reveal the instructions of the Great Churning, or the shift of humanity into harmony with Mother Earth, and this revelation was given to those eager to return harmony between humanity and all the ecosystems. So we see the Great Churning as a name for the essential adventure of our time. the shift from industrial growth society into a life-sustaining civilization. Every time they just talk about things, and you'll have one president after another talking about the employment rate and GDP and all that, really kind of makes me sick, because it's just all part of the sickness of the world. It's just so disharmonious, and I feel it's just kind of an evil system that we find ourselves in.
It is. To me, it's the cancer. It's the cancer that has grown and spread to a point where it's no longer sustainable from the earth and many of the people of the earth too. It's just simply not sustainable. So what I see is that something has to change. Something has to give. This just isn't going to work because it's parasitic. It feeds and feeds and feeds, and after a while, there's just hardly nothing to feed on, and so the system crumbles in on itself. That's what I see happening, and hopefully the closer we are to the earth right now and the healthier we are, maybe it won't hurt us too bad when things do change.
So we look at this Tibetan prophecy, which says, when the iron eagle flies and horses run on wheels, the Tibetan people will be scattered over the earth, and the Dharma will go to the land of the red man. And we see the Hopi prophecies saying, when the iron bird flies, and the red-robed people of the east who have lost their land will appear, and the two brothers from across the great ocean will be reunited. So you see how similar it is. And there is something that's so resonant about the Hopi and the Tibetans. Don't you agree?
Oh, gosh, yes. They're both so humble and civil and nice and kind, the way people should be.
So you got the Tibetan 6-syllable mantra, Om Mani Padme Om, and it's contained on a stone tablet, prayer offerings in Tibet. And it's associated with the deity of compassion. It means favorable, jewel, lotus flower, truly. According to the description of the 14th Dalai Lama, the following chart can be made on the symbolism of it. And, there is some similarities with the Hopi and the Hopi traditions as well. And, again, Messiah, right? There's so much stuff here that is just so interesting and similar. So we know, the time frame that we are in. And this is the most exciting time to be alive. And, we do recognize, obviously, that we are on a roller coaster ride that could be kind of scary when you're heading down real fast.
Yeah, it can. It can be exciting, invigorating, scary, all of these things. But I think the key is to find a way to welcome it. Make it a challenge for yourself. Make it fun. If it isn't fun, it won't get done. So every time we do see a challenge, somehow there's ways we can play games with ourselves to make these things fun.
So this picture is from Prophecy Rock, which is close to Arabi in Arizona. And you see the path of human activity and the past. So you have 3 fallen worlds. See, there's slightly different interpretations depending on who you're looking at, but pretty much the same. As we were talking about 2 world wars and the great purification before Pahana's return, and the timeline of the return of the Great Spirit itself, laying down weapons. So interesting. The Hopi has described the large human figure on the left as the Great Spirit, with bow in hand on the left by the symbol of the churning earth and sun. The bow represents his instructions to the Hopi to lay down their weapons. The rod or line to the right of the Great Spirit represents the timeline. The timeline represents a life path which divides into 2, the lower path of harmony with life and the upper path of white man's scientific achievements. The first 3 figures above represent the first 3 worlds that passed away. The 4th small human figure above represents the 4th world where the Hopi had met the white man. This world too is passing away, but the elders warn that some Hopi have been seduced by its glamour and fallen into its spell, so to speak. Yet the narrow path below represents harmony with the earth and leads to a new world. But through great trial and purification, The first two circles represent the two world wars, called by the Hopi the Great Shaking of the Earth. Where the upper road disintegrates, the lower road meets a third smaller circle, representing the Great Purification. After this purification, cornstalk of new abundance will grow when the Great Spirit returns. So we see that. And isn't that interesting when you look at the symbol? That's just like the German cross that we have seen. So, we see time and time again all these same symbols. So therefore, the tablets can be seen to coincide with Hopi traditions and ritual as described on Prophet Rock and Hopi Rattle. And so, the coming of Pahana will begin the fifth world. And isn't it interesting when we looked at Mother Shipton's prophecy too? What happens after the dragon's tail? And, are we looking up in the sky soon and going to be seeing blue Kachina? Is the comet blue Kachina? And, is it also the tail of the dragon of Mother Shipton? Because when Mother Shipton's prophecy is done, what does she say? She says the silver serpent comes out of the sky and lands, and strange men come out, and they teach us how to do everything anew, just again. Everything starts over again. Interesting coincidence, huh?
Extremely interesting, yeah.
Yeah, it's all so fascinating when we look at all these things. So we're on the cusp, guys. We're really on the cusp. And, when we hear that Native American legend, too, about the two wolves, one basically good, one bad. Which one are you going to feed?
That's so important. That's such a beautiful story, and it's worth looking up and even printing it out, writing it down. That story is, good on so many levels. You have hatred and greed and destruction and all of these bad things, and then you have hope, and you have goodness, and you have love, and you have caring. And which creature are you going to feed inside of you? What are you going to feed it? Which one do you want to grow? And which one do you want to let wither away and kind of die? Personally, I definitely want to feed the good wolf. Absolutely. And I know I still have a lot of problems inside of me. I still have my demons that I fight with, but at least I have this knowledge and information how to deal with it. By which wolf do I want to feed?
And there's so many beautiful, benevolent people in the family here too. You see Grizz saying, anybody who's in Tennessee, if it hits the fan, come to me, I gotcha. Just that's beautiful. And we're going to be reaching out and picking each other up. That's what we have to do in these times. We know what's going on. And so this is the death of a toxic system that's poisoned the earth. It can't go on because, it's just so destructive. It has to change. And so what's critical for us is keeping our vibe high, operating out of love. Again, those who return to the ways given to us in the original teachings and live a natural way of life will not be touched by the coming of the purifier. They will survive and build a new world. So we have to go back to the old ways where we live in harmony with the earth and with each other as well, not hoarding resources. When you see the greed that's in this world, and you see all the political leadership, and we keep electing billionaires and millionaires and the like to lead us. Well, they're leading us to destruction. They're leading us to death, and they're also killing the planet. So it has to stop. It has to change. And, here we're talking about in this article the similarities of the Maya and the Hopi. Again, and all the indigenous people know because they're in contact with the earth. They still feel the vibrations of the mother beneath our feet. And as soon as I went and did my standing meditation, I'm rocking to and fro, guys. The earth is shaking. We are going through this change. And part of the symbolism too, when we go back to that PDF here, the turning and the rotating. And it also is talking about the North Star and everything in Polaris. And we actually have different North Stars depending on where we are and what time frame. And, we are in a pole shift too, a magnetic pole reversal. Will there be an actual shifting? A lot of the legends, they do kind of indicate that. And boy, the wind at times can be roaring. So be aware of that as well as you make your preparations. No, we don't want to live in fear. But at the same time, we need to be prepared, but we need to keep our vibes high. Keeping our vibes high are, of prime importance as we, look to the Hopi and how they live so simply. And these people now that have been put on these, tribal lands, they were given really some of the worst land to grow things on. And, it's just atrocious what's been done to the peoples of the world. And I really look at it, I think now more of in a perspective of, the Atlantean leftover culture dominating what was the Lemurian culture that was much more spiritual in this fourth world that we've been in, looking at the two others that were directly before it. And it's fascinating too. Robert Seffer, who he has another channel, he has one channel under his name, and it's SCPHER, Atlantean Gardens, and he does really good work. His thought is that when we look at the different peoples on the earth, that they've kind of developed from different stock. And that's always hit me too. Like, what if, simply the differences when we look at the different peoples, like if you look at Australian Aboriginals, they look very different than somebody that's, say, Nordic. I mean, way different. So perhaps, again, so many of us, ultimately we all come from the stars. And perhaps, we are all from different areas as well. And we've talked about, Pleiadians. And we've talked about Arcturians and Syrians and Andromedans. And of course, we've talked about Draco, and then there's the Nagas. And, it goes on and on and on, the different types of grays. There's all sorts of life out there. And our history is much more interesting than we probably ever could know. And with all those anomalous objects, such as metal spheres that are millions of years old, doesn't seem to make any sense with what we've been taught. But ultimately, what we have is the Warriors of the Rainbow. And the Warriors of the Rainbow would show the people that the Great Spirit is full of love and understanding, and teach them how to make the earth beautiful again. And that's what you guys are. You guys are Warriors of the Rainbow, and that's our job.
It is our job, and it's time that we come here and we start putting to work everything that we've learned, everything that we're, our skills are getting honed. I know that most of us, our families, think we're a little bit weird, but it's okay, because there's going to come a time where they need you, and they're going to honor your input. All you need to do is just keep being humble, keep just reading and learning things, and there will come a time when your expertise is going to be needed and cherished and valued, and you're going to be that one person. But that's why we came here. It really feels like we are on a cusp of something changing, something big, something beautiful, something, not literally, hopefully not earth-shaking, but as far as our worlds are concerned, something big.
Most definitely very, very big. This is massive. This is the turning of the ages. And so it's time for all of us to, come together. As Queen Star Sophia says, we will all build together. Yeah, we are definitely warriors of the rainbow. And interesting, too, that the Hopi, in the prophecies there, the Great Spirit lays down the bow. So it's about, we're basically saying we're not going to fall for your wars anymore, and if we want to see real change and make this an easier transition, then, the leadership of the world would have to pull all the soldiers back. It tells you where they're at when more than half of the discretionary budget goes for military spending. That's not a peace-seeking, leadership. And I do think that the United States is probably going to get one of the strongest purifications of any country on the earth because of the karmic retribution, all the wars. And we've talked about the U.S. being at war 91% of the time since its existence. And we've just seen these corporate wars go on and on forever. So, yeah, the karma is going to be pretty intense on the U.S. and also on all the NATO countries as well. And then that gets me thinking about Deagle as well, because, again, that's what the numbers show there. But there's a lot of plans underfoot. But ultimately, what we're looking at is going to be the start of a new age where we're back in balance and harmony with the earth and all of nature, which is the good news. And then also that we will have help from the benevolent ones. If you look at all the prophecies, though, the benevolent ones come after. So it's kind of like we're on our own. They're helping from above. They're sending us energy and love and guidance. But it's like we have to do this ourselves, and Mother Earth is going to do it herself as well.
She will, and our part is to be good to ourselves so that when it comes time and people do need us, we can be there for them. Self-care, so important. Self-love, so important. And it's not about being selfish. It's about being prepared so when someone needs you, you can really catch them. Things are going to change. We're going to see things that we've never seen before. And for us, it's not going to be so shocking. But for our loved ones who've always thought we were just a little crazy, it's going to be shocking for them. And we need to be there to catch them. That's the right thing to do.
And so Grizz said, what about us that have been in the U.S., that have been seeking to help and protect? Like when you look at, look at Lady Liberty. Give me your meek, you're weak, you're tired, the hopeless and the helpless, and come, so the original thought there, that again, that's how everything has been so twisted, because everything that is good, they corrupt and they twist it. It's kind of their way. They can't let goodness spread. It's purely demonic when you get down to it. So it goes back to this, those that return to the ways given to us in the original teachings. So it's all about us. It's all about the individuals, and living out of the purity of your heart and purity of your intention. So, doing like what Grizz was offering, saying, come to me and I will shelter you, then he should be protected. And we know in these types of situations and in wars and stuff, things can happen. I mean, look at Hiroshima and Nagasaki and the tragedy of that situation. And I don't understand, I know what the given line is. Well, millions of soldiers would have died in an invasion of Japan. But when you look at the whole thing, we knew that Pearl Harbor was coming. We could go right down the line with all these wars, talk about the sinking of the Lusitania, talk about, Archduke Ferdinand's driver taking them down the wrong street, and then all of a sudden you have the assassination. There's no coincidences. All these things are planned way in advance. And part of that planned chaos that we always see around us. So, we have to be the strong trees holding up everything in the storm as the winds are howling, spreading out our branches as shelter for those that are going to need it.
Yeah, we do what we can where we can. And that's really, I feel all that's being asked for us is do what you can where you can, and do be your best person. Just be your best person, and everything is going to come back to you tenfold. I honestly believe that. It's just about following your heart, being a good human being. Don't be covert, don't play games. Just, to me, that's where there's a lot of demonic stuff rolling around, is when people are playing games with other people. trying to get one over on someone, trying to be covert. I really believe that's a huge problem. So being pure of heart, and sometimes, it's difficult to find out or figure out what's your truth. What is your truth? This is time for a little self-exploration, which wouldn't hurt anything at all. I think it would be very beneficial for people to write things down, to figure out who they are. And usually once you find out who you are, you're able to help the next person.
And we are protected. I've had so many people tell me of the ones that protect me and have guided me, and I've had experiences too. I've shared with you guys in the past when I was in Sarasota. After the Illuminati reached out to me like the second time, and had wanted me to join them and wanted me to go for training in a suburb of Atlanta, where I would be mentored by somebody in there, and I declined. Then my office, my little room I was using for my office, was right at the driveway, which was only about 9 feet away from the sidewalk, and maybe 12 feet away from the street. And a car went flying through Iron Gate and, knocked an iron gate down at the church across the street, did donuts inside the park next to the church, and then came barreling straight for me. Right across the street, heading straight for my driveway, and it was like it hit a brick wall, and it bounced down the sidewalk. It lost its bumper in my driveway, and it took out mailboxes, tiny trees, all sorts of things, hit neighbors' properties, and went around the block and hit a whole bunch of other things, and then the guy just abandoned the car and ran off. It was almost like I feel like I had divine protection there, because it was coming straight for me as I was facing the street, and it would have probably gone right through and hit me in the desk. But I feel like that was divine protection.
Yeah, definitely. Sounds like divine protection to me, totally and completely. There's a lot of things that they want to do to people who are trying to spread light and love. First of all, they just want to make it very difficult to spread this love, make it painful. And, Grizzly says, my heart's not fully pure. I have some scarring too, but I try my best. That's all you need to do. Do your best. We all have a lot of scarring. And I was getting information in today about PTSD and what happens to your brain. And I think that's another thing that has been done to us by design, to give us all of these traumas, because every time we try to get through a trauma, or we have a trauma and we try to work through it and we retouch it or re-feel it, it's like cutting that cut back open again. It's like it can't quite fully heal. So healing is super, super imperative. And I've learned personally, for me, journaling is one way to help things heal. It's also a way to get those reoccurring thoughts out of your head and onto a piece of paper, close the book, burn it, do what you got to do. There's something about putting pen to paper that is so extremely healing, and I think it can help a lot of people.
I don't really remember the type of car. The thing that was interesting, though, was when they reached out to me, it was only about a month after I had started the channel. It didn't even have maybe 500 subscribers, maybe 1,000 at most. And I hadn't talked about anything controversial. All I put up was just energy work, QiGong, things like that, understanding life force. But what they said was they've been watching me for years. And that didn't make any sense to me. How could they be watching me for years when I hadn't really done anything to, be worthy of watching? Now, I've had over 20 million views, so now people would, be more likely to pay attention to you. But then it didn't make any sense. But then I started thinking about the fact that I've always had these encounters with these ETs, going back to the first one I can remember, well, for sure was 7. I'm not sure what this other thing was when I was 5, but for sure when I was 7, it was the first contact that I remember with what I would call an ET. So, perhaps it's bloodline thing. I am Rh negative. Not that that matters so much. But my kids have had encounters with ETs their whole lives too. And my father alluded to it as well. He was very Catholic as far as his upbringing, but he said he knew. He wouldn't go into details, and he wouldn't share it with anybody but me. But he said he knew aliens were real and they exist. He would never go into details, and being super Catholic, he coming from a really strict Catholic background, he wouldn't really want to talk about it as well.
Yeah, I know. And Adam Ann says, pretty sure they're watching a lot of us. Make sure and wave, right? Exactly. They do. They know a lot of us, and we're on their radar. But we got to march forward anyway. Keep doing what's right. And I know that there's reward in that. There's a ton of reward in just doing the next right thing. And that's all you got to keep doing. If you don't know what to do, just look and find the next right thing and do it.
And so Janelle brought up a great point. She says, because they operate beyond one lifetime.
That makes total sense to me. They do, and they have more answers than we do.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that kind of was coming to that conclusion, that somehow they knew who I was going into this life. And I'm suspicious about my brother, because my brother, when he was 5, he got diagnosed with a brain tumor, and he died when he was 16. So it almost made me wonder if it was in the V that he got as a 5-year-old that did that. Or somehow if he was targeted, that they wanted to get rid of him because he might be a threat. So I don't know, I'm not sure on that, but I've seen them, so I know that interdimensional and extraterrestrials are real. I've seen them as well as demonic stuff straight up and straightforward. And, it's very real. And I've also seen angelic, which is wonderful to behold. And it's amazing and so benevolent. And then there's also the things we would call elementals and nature spirits. They're very real too. And we shouldn't be afraid of those either.
No, I do believe that those little guys are here to help, our body elementals and things like that. They come in and, if we're doing something good for ourselves, that gives them a channel to come in and do some good work for you. Definitely. And so, part of the point is when you look at all these prophecies from around the world and all these traditions and everything kind of lines up, it shows us, how we are all tied together. And so we have to get past the divisive thinking. We have to get past thinking there's only one dogma, because there's not. I mean, as far as true dogma, we need to get rid of dogma and just simply let it go. I think in the future, we're going to become way more spiritual, a lot less dogmatic, and we'll recognize the divinity that lies within all of us and cultivate it and respect each other's traditions. We will stop trying to convert everybody to our line of thinking that we have, adopted or been, basically conditioned to accept, because that's a huge part of what's wrong with this world. It's a big part of what's wrong with this world. So we have to let it go. We have to let all that go and just hold love in our heart and respect each other. Diversity is a beautiful thing. As I've often said, as somebody that loves to cook, I love Indian food, but it's nice to have Italian food now and then. It's nice to have a little Mediterranean food, get some baba ganoush or something along those lines, or maybe have some Chinese. Variety is the spice of life. It's beautiful that we're all different, because ultimately, that's just coverings. Again, going back to the Bhagavad Gita, it's just, it's like driving a different vehicle, and we change it. And right now, we might have one particular vehicle that we're in, and we might exchange it next time for something that's totally different, so we could learn new lessons. Or so we can do different missions, because we all are here on a mission. And we all pick a star map and figure out what our parents are going to be, where the planets are going to be, and, how we're going to act based on that planetary alignment. At least that's my belief. And we all have our own special belief. And if something resonates with you, go with it. It's more like your DNA is remembering something. And just explore that, get to know yourself, and then you can help teach other people.
Yeah, so Calvin says, Team Cilantro, that's my favorite herb. I love cilantro, my favorite. We have a bunch of it growing. So guys, thank you so much for joining us once again. As always, I want to thank you for your support on Ko-Fi and Patreon as well. May you guys always be blessed with abundant peace, love, happiness, health, and well-being. And Cindy, before we go, will you ring the bell and clear our energy fields as we send out light and love and peace to everyone in the chat room and everyone that's going to be listening after? So thank you guys. As always, God bless and namaste.
God bless and namaste.